So the ANC, Bongiwe, wrapping up its conference with some work still to be done, but it has been quite a journey to the culmination of events that led them to Nasrec and a top 7 leadership structure that will be closely watched, no doubt, in the months ahead and in the lead up to the elections in 2024. And for a change, I get to be with our colleagues in the flesh, Vuyo, Mvoko and Sophie Mokoena. And I think the objective of us having a conversation in this format is to really, in a sense, move out of the rote of the daily events that were happening at that conference, and to rely on both contemporary events and our collective institutional memory on what this means in terms of this existential threat we said the ANC has been facing, in the way that its politics has deteriorated, in the way that its leadership has degenerated into infighting, battling and chaos. Just give us a sense, Sophie, of your outtakes now that this conference is, in a way, finally over.
Well, clearly it was a tense conference, and unfortunately the business of conference was delayed by divisions within the party. I mean, for the first time, we didn't see a situation where the results are announced when delegates are there and also when we are there. Because then you know that then the president of the ANC will make comments if it's too late, if he can't read the entire speech, the closing remarks, because he has to speak to the elected NEC in terms of line of march. So it's something new. But secondly, I spoke to Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. You know that ahead of this conference, she availed herself for the position of the president. She was not nominated by branches, and then she had hoped that the nomination from the floor, she will garner enough support, and she realized it was not going to happen. So that tension, but the question for me was, from here where to, let's take a listen at what she had to say in terms of the current leadership and whether she will support the current leadership. And maybe Vuyo can unpack with his institutional memory the body language and the words.
The conference went well. The new leadership has been elected. Of course, the new leadership must be supported. The contest is over, and the new leadership must embrace the losers must embrace the leadership. But the real victor is the ANC, and we are looking forward to working together in whatever capacity. We work in the ANC, it doesn't matter what capacity you are in, but you serve the people in whatever way. So we hope that we will be able to work together in whatever capacity until 2024 and beyond.
Vuyo, a repeated in whatever capacity. What do you make of that?
I'm not convinced, I'm sorry. Whether it's because people are hungover, perhaps it's too early, to reconcile with the fact that you've lost or things didn't go your way. Maybe eventually people are going to accept that reality and perhaps recommit to the bigger cause. But right now, you spoke to Batabile Dlamini only a few minutes ago. She didn't sound like someone who has accepted the reality of what has happened. Now, and this is what pundits, analysts have been talking about when they say, there is nothing from the people who went in with the hope of winning that shows that they've accepted one guy. There's only one guy, and that's the provincial chairperson of KZN. I just liked his demeanor, the things he had to say, even poking fun at himself and their position. I mean, the magnanimity, of course, perhaps it's a contradiction sort of magnanimity in the same sentence you're mentioning someone who lost a conference, but his spirit, you know, what came out both from his the things he said, but also his body language. I said, this is the kind of leadership that you need, especially at this time, at a point where the ANC has to show and not tell us, you know, that it is a changed organization. So with due respect, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma didn't give me that sense, but Tabile Dlamini didn't give me that sense. Instead, she went all the way back to raise complaints that they had raised in the run-up to conference. And no proof has come out of that, including the buying of votes and all those things. But you could feel, you know.
Is it because, Sophie, when we were on the ground, the body language that you just spoke about before we played that clip, the body language of winner takes all, body language of we are victorious, and kind of like you could tell even ahead of it the battle lines were drawn, but afterwards the body language kind of remained almost the same, if one can say.
Let's make an example of President of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, and the predecessor, Jacob Zuma. Where was Jacob Zuma when his successor was closing the conference? Mbeki was seated there. Of course, Halima was busy. The old leadership assisting the current leadership. Now, as we speak, President Jacob Zuma, former President Jacob Zuma, is engaged in a battle with the current South African president, who is also the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, on issues related to their legal wrangling. And it speaks to the division. There's no healing. And I did ask the minister in the presidency, Mondli Ngungubele, I did speak to him after this conference, to get a view from him. It's a symbol of you have a long way to mend the rifts. Let's take a listen at what Mondli Ngungubele had to say about the former president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, and the current president of the ANC.
I'm sure you've never seen Cyril Ramaphosa, since he took over as a president, directing untoward words to any former president. You've never seen him frowning or looking in a very strange way at any one of them. But in the different direction, you have seen that happening. But we are confident, if he continues to be like that, his peaceful attitude, his conviction that only through peace that this country can survive is the only way that we're going to get through. Listen, 53rd conference spoke about renewal, 54th conference spoke about renewal, and this president, since he took over, he is focused on renewal. You can see how the law enforcement agents are beginning to arrest, how ANC leaders are being made to face music under his leadership, how he tries at all material times to avoid being part of the squabbles.
For me, the term cognitive dissonance arises again when you hear the words of Mondli Ngungubele and you see the video of Jacob Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa being convivial on the sidelines, knowing that these are the very hours, in fact, where there is a conflict, a precipitous conflict between the two of them over the private prosecution. And there are things that are happening that pose a definite threat to each of them, then they show up in that way. What Mondli Ngungubele is also talking to there is almost like the polyfillering over the cracks. What are your views on whether this kind of rhetoric and approach of the ANC has got to end? It is run out of time, and you don't feel that sense of urgency. It's the same kind of statementing, it's the same kind of referencing, and it's the same kind of characterization of the ANC. Whether or not they say, yes, we've been in trouble, we've made some mistakes, that's not enough, Vuyo?
You're right. You're so right. I mean, Iman, because I mean, you could see from the way the speech was crafted. You could see from Cyril Ramaphosa's body language that every attempt had been made to avoid him coming across as being triumphalist, right? But in reality, I mean, those tensions remain there, and the squabble, because remember, and we've been talking about this over the past, few days while we were there, that the pushback has to continue from his adversaries, because for many of them, it's about their future. I think Batabile Dlamini a short while ago captured this very well, because remember, the ANC stands between people's ambitions, stands between them going to jail, stands between them and being things that they would rather not be, and only the ANC can give them that protection, that security, the money, and all those things. So people are bound to protect what the ANC can give them with everything. They will throw everything at it. Now, it is then up to Cyril Ramaphosa and the rest of the ANC leadership, right, to then say we cannot now continue on the path. But remember, we're here in 2017. Okay, there was hope that things were going to change quite drastically, not only for the sake of the ANC, but more importantly for the sake of the country. Very little of that. Yes, there has been movement. Look, there have been changes that are discernible. With regard to you've been seeing people being prosecuted, you've seen the pushback, but things started happening, but not nearly. We're not nearly where we South Africans would want the ANC and the rest of us to be. Now, here is a moment for them to prove beyond the good things, acknowledgements, and then saying we're on the right path, and we're going to show people that indeed things. It has to go beyond that. How ironic that. Hours, hardly, a couple of hours after the conference ended, where are we? Stage 6, was announced.
And you still even hear a Secretary General who's now new saying they need to accelerate service delivery. For how long is this acceleration going to happen? When do they actually deliver the services? But it's not every day that I would like to call myself young. A young journalist like myself is surrounded by institutional memory. Let's talk about, again, you've all three covered conferences as journalists. How has it been like for you now? Different, not different, more of the same?
Today, actually, and I'm happy it came right at the end. Right? It just shows, whereas Sophie was saying earlier, the business of a conference wasn't finished. Now, that's an indictment. And remember yesterday, Fikile Mbalula's first briefing as Secretary General, he started by saying that from day one, mistakes happened that ought to not have happened, for which he apologized profusely. Hardly a day later, conference can't finish its business. It's an indictment on the ANC, and that to me is what is not giving us a great deal of hope that things are going to change for the better. I hope sincerely so that will be proven wrong.
I think what they should have done, it's not the first time where you have a conference that ends early hours of the morning. They should have just done that. In 2017, we left Nasrec literally at 4 a.m. And I think they should have done that so that you are able to announce the top, the National Executive Committee members. But secondly, I did a package that looks at ANC conferences, 91 up to 2017. The last soundbite I used there, it was so prophetic. It is a soundbite where President Ramaphosa is closing the 2017 conference by saying one of the delegates after the conference stood up, went to him, and the delegate said, Mr. President, please, I'm pleading with you, ensure that the ANC is united. The last words he uttered today, he said, that delegate was again back at conference. That delegate is from Free State. That delegate said to him, Mr. President, this time around, please, make sure that the ANC is united. Looking at what transpired 2017 to here, the big question is will the current total leadership that will emerge there be able to understand that the 5 years has been very, very bad, as Nomvula characterized it. The current first Deputy Secretary General, Nomvula Mokoena.
Yeah. There's just a final note that I want to add, and perhaps it's a note to the editors and to the journalists as well. If we had in that room the victims of malnourishment, the victims of crime, photographs of families who are struggling with unemployment, if that realism is constantly in the room, would the news conferences be handled in that tone? Would the conversations be handled in that tone? And that for me is just, part of the observation and the reflection, even the pally-palliness and the relationships. Of course, we've built relationships with politicians over the years, so there's that familiarity. But always that service is to the viewers. It's to the public. And I think that's something that really needs to, I think, be re-injected in a big way. Thank you to Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International Editor, and Vuyo Mvoko, anchor of the Watchdog.